Well, it was a short-lived trip to Kansas City for the Mountaineers as they fall to BYU in second-round action of the Big 12 tournament. And that'll do it for the Mountaineers' aspirations of reaching the NCAA tournament. Sad ending. Obviously, you had hopes that you could make it to Kansas City, go on a little run, win a couple games, make it interesting, get on the bubble, and sneak your way into the tournament. But that is not going to happen. Mountaineers fall to BYU. We got you covered here on Mountaineer Moment, episode 165, recapping this game, talking about a few more things as this season comes to a close. Or are they going to find another tournament to play in this postseason? I'll give my thoughts on that. Stick around for episode 165 of Mountaineer Moment. This is the Mountaineer Moment, your source for all things West Virginia football and basketball. From pregame to postgame coverage and breaking news, we've got you covered. Let's go. Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of Mountaineer Moment. My name's Troy, and this is your source for all things West Virginia football and basketball. And Mountaineers fall in Kansas City to BYU, Dybantsa and BYU, 68-48 the final score. It sounds crazy to say that, but it wasn't that wide of a margin, obviously, for the bulk of this game. You look at the play-by-play, you follow this thing, and West Virginia trailed by 5 and trailed by 3 with like 9 minutes to go in this game, and then they went ice cold, and BYU got hot, and that's kind of tells the story of this one. 68-48 the final, and we'll get into some keys as to what led to the Mountaineers falling and being sent home packing. We'll talk about the turnovers they had, and again BYU's late surge that they had that the Mountaineers simply couldn't. It just came unraveling. Like it really, really did, because they were sticking around, and then it just it just unraveled late, and you hate to see it, but that's what happened. And then at the end, I'll give my thoughts on West Virginia and potentially playing in the Crown or the NIT or whatever that's going to look like. Should they do it? Shouldn't they do it? I'll give my thoughts at the end of this episode. But I wanted to start this one, episode 165, really just saying thank you to joining Mountaineer Moment at whatever point you have on this journey. So whether this is your first episode or your 165th episode, thank you for being here and subscribing to. Thank you for helping grow this channel. This is now, if West Virginia has in fact played their final basketball game of the season, this will complete an entire football season and an entire basketball season for West Virginia football, West Virginia basketball, one season of each here on Mountaineer Moment, because this show started right at the beginning of football season, and 165 episodes later, again, if they don't accept an invite to the Crown or wherever, this will be 2 seasons in the books. And so, kind of a little nostalgia, a little in my feels, I don't know about that, but pretty cool to be covering West Virginia football and basketball for complete seasons of each team for the first year, and looking forward to the future and what this channel is gonna look like and what it's gonna hold. But for basketball wise, man, if you've been here, every single game. We've had bonus episodes included and things throughout the season too, but every single Mountaineer basketball game this season, we have given you a preview and a recap to each and every single game, every time. And that's pretty cool. And so I'm thankful for that. Thankful for, again, the listeners, watchers, viewers, whatever, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're at right now. Thank you, seriously, for helping me get to where this show has gotten after 1 year, and really just 8.5 months. So, yeah. Wanted to say that. But if you're not yet subscribed after all that, hit that subscribe button for me, and we'll continue to grow this Mountaineer Moment community. But as far as the game is concerned, there's a few things that stand out. I mean, by and large, this was played in a West Virginia style and pace. BYU is 24 hours removed from scoring over 100 points against K-State, and West Virginia held them to 68 tonight. The problem was the West Virginia offense, as has been the problem all season long. And in this case, it kept you from from moving on in the Big 12 tournament. It's kind of funny if I remember correctly, it wasn't on Mountaineer Moment. It was with Locked On West Virginia with the Mountaineer Paul. I think I said like the final score prediction. I predicted West Virginia to win, and I think I said 75-68. So BYU getting 68 points. I believe I said that. If I said something else, leave it in the comments. But I said 75-68 Mountaineers. Well, I got one of those numbers right. It was BYU's number, and West Virginia is simply not even close to the number that I don't even want to say thought they'd get to, hoped that they would get to, as they lose this one in blowout fashion. I mean, 23 points in the first half, 25 in the second half for the Mountaineers, 22 turnovers on the game, which were just extremely costly. And a lot of them were just bad plays, right? Every turnover is a bad play, but bad decisions. I'm thinking of one. It was West Virginia inbounded under their basket that they're trying to score at, and Jasper inbounded it to Brennan to Belo, and Jasper they're playing really tight defense. Dybantsa was involved. Was that in the first? Was that how the Dybantsa got that runaway dunk where he got fouled and wasn't touched at all to end the first half? It might have been that play right there, that sequence. And Belo just he's got two guys around him. Jasper's being tightly covered. He's trying to come around him, use it as a screen and get the ball from him. And then you're trapped on the sideline, so it's like a third defender because you're playing with that too. And he tried to force a handoff into Jasper. Dybantsa takes it and runs the other way and dunks it and gets a mysterious and one. But that killed you. And that's just one example. I could give you 10 more of these 22 turnovers that I can look at and say, well, that was really, really bad. And it's a bad decision in the sense that, man, like, you don't have to give Jasper the ball right there, right? You can pivot, look around somewhere else, be patient, find someone else that's going to get open and give him the ball. That was just a forced thing, and it was a turnover waiting to happen. And Belo did that several times tonight with 7 turnovers. And he's had moments like that this season where he struggled to take care of the basketball. Every West Virginia starter had 2 or more turnovers. Belo had 7. Harlan Obioha had 4. He was abysmal tonight. 4 turnovers for Huff, 2 turnovers for Floyd, 3 turnovers for Eaglestaff. More than his point total tonight with 2 points on 1 of 3. He just, we'll have to do I'm thinking like an ESPN 30 for 30 on Trayson Eaglestaff and what happened when he came into Morgantown. But just constantly all season long hoped he would get it going and never really did. There was never a game, and this is an aside and we can get to this at a later day, but there was never a game this season where it was like, all right, Trayson Eaglestaff heat check, right? Like, he's on a heater right now. Like, give him the ball, let's go. Like, he's going to knock everything down. There was never a moment this season where that was the case. He had a couple 20-point performances and, had a couple moments. I think it was Colorado at home and Arizona State on the run that helped us, really win. Made a big shot against, I think it was Cincinnati at home to help us get that win. But other than that, right, like, he had 20 against Xavier, I think. He struggled all season long, and he struggled again tonight when you needed scoring. He struggled, right? West Virginia, simply put, Honor Huff was the scorer on this team. Belo obviously double figures a lot in Big 12 play, like 13 consecutive games or something to end the season. Got 11 tonight. Honor Huff had 17 tonight. Got to the free throw line 9 times, made 8. 3 of 8 from 3, 3 of 13 from the floor. Not good percentage-wise, and he kind of was like that all season. Obioha missed layups and dunks and, was really on par for his game this season. 2 points, 4 turnovers in 19 minutes. Jasper Floyd, 9 points, 5 boards, 2 assists. I thought he did all right. At times, Chance Moore did what Chance Moore does, 7 points, 3 of 9 from the free throw line, and 7 rebounds. That's pretty on par for Chance Moore, too. This team just, before we get too far down that of talking about specific players, on a broad scale, this team doesn't put the ball in the hoop. And I've said that, if you've been here again, previews and recaps of every game, you've heard me say that. Sometimes the basketball game is really, really simple. Well, when you don't make your free throws, when you shoot 38%, 28% from 3, when you allow AJ Dybantsa, who's the best player college best collegiate player in America. 27 points, 11 for 24. It's not, he's under 50%. He had a really, really great game, great first half. Kennard Davis killed you, absolutely killed you. 5 of 6 from 3, 20 points for him. Rob Wright, after getting banged up in that first round, didn't look like himself. He played 35 minutes, though. Facilitated more, 6 assists, 4 boards, and 11 points for Rob Wright. But obviously he's got the potential to go for 35 on you, and he didn't have to do that tonight. But it was those 3 guys. I mean, they carried the load. There was only 10 other points out there. Kiba, Kite, and Diamande had 6, and Kite had 4 for 10 combined, and then everything else was Dybantsa, Davis, and Rob Wright getting the scoring, and that's not a surprise. That's what BYU does. One of the best, 1-2 punches, Rob Wright and AJ Dybantsa in the country, certainly scoring-wise, and they showed that tonight. Dybantsa really, really good. Much better game from him than he did, the first game in Morgantown. Got to tip your cap in some way, shape, or form to him, but it just sucks. I mean, he gave up 16 offensive rebounds. I mean, Bilo himself in the first matchup between these teams had 7 offensive rebounds himself. Like, there was more opportunities that you took advantage of. You got out-rebounded by 5. You out-rebounded by them by 10 last time. Now, that's also due in part to he made more shots last time, because there was, as far as BYU's scoring, now the first time these two teams met, they had 45 or 46 or something like that in the second half. But West Virginia, held them off. And you were able to hold them off from taking the lead and winning that game because you made shots yourself, right? We talked about it pregame. You continued to throw punches when they were throwing them at you. Well, tonight, my whole mindset is I'm watching that second half, and West Virginia was fighting. They really, really were, and you can applaud that, right? It was a much better effort than what we saw in K-State the first 30 minutes of that game, which was probably their lowest effort level of the season and intensity and things like that. But against BYU tonight, through 30 minutes, when goes from an 8-point game to a 5-point game to a 6-point game to a 3-point game to a 2-point game, right? There were moments when you played really, really good defense. You kept them from scoring. You went down and you scored yourself. And, and if not that, you were matching them. And again, 9 minutes left in this thing. It was a 1-2 possession game. And then BYU started scoring, and you stopped. Pretty simple. I just want to look at some numbers as I keep chatting here. But that was the difference maker in this one, was the surge that BYU went on and how you just went cold. Yeah, I mean, here it is. This game was 43-40 in favor of BYU with 9:30 to go. 43-40 with 9.5 to go. And so you do the math. Over the last 9.5 minutes, West Virginia scored 8 points. And they were trailing by 3 at that point. It's just, and the BYU's not a good defense. They gave up over 90 to K-State last night, right? Like, it's frustrating. But how on par is it for West Virginia to just go ice cold? 43-40, and as the game just continued to get away from you, right? It got from 43-40 to 57-42 over a 5-minute span. And then it's over, right? It's over when you get to that. And so that, from the 9.5 minute mark to the 4.5 minute mark in the second half, did you in? Which is interesting because contrary to what I said pregame, if you were here, I said, with a team playing the night before, maybe they come out. They've played on this horrendous floor before. I'll talk about that in a second. But BYU had a game under their belt. They scored 105 points. They red-hot offense in the second half. My thought was, well, first half they might come out and punch you in the mouth. And we've seen West Virginia get off to slow starts, and so that could be on par. But West Virginia, they had an early lead. Obviously, BYU ended the half better. But this was just, an 8-point game at halftime, 31-23. And then my thought, again, pregame was at the end of the game, you're going to have the advantage, silly me for thinking you'd have an advantage because of, their legs and exhaustion and, your defense wearing them down, grinding them out. And that simply wasn't the case, right? Both of those things were wrong that I thought, could be something to watch. I wasn't fully convinced it was going to happen, but just something to keep an eye on. And in fact, it ended up being the opposite of what you needed to keep an eye on. So, BYU goes on, this game was won in that 5-minute stretch. And again, they lost the game by 20. But man, oh man, were they there. And again, I just kept saying in that second half, just keep fighting, keep fighting, keep fighting, keep fighting. And they did until eventually not enough shots fell. Too many turnovers, not enough shots fell, and you missed out on opportunities when you slowed this BYU offense down, because they were stuck in the 40s for a while there in that second half, and you just couldn't fully take advantage. And so that's where this game was lost, was in that 5-minute stretch, from 9.5 to 4.5 left in the second half where they put it away. It went from a 1-possession game to a 15-point game and eventually 20, and that's it. So that's what it was. BYU's late surge that did West Virginia in. And before I forget, can we talk about this court? Sure, it looks cool. It's new and so 2026 and so much fun to look at or whatever. Maybe it hurts your eyes. I don't know what opinion you have. And I didn't see, forgive me for my ignorance on this, I did not see, I have not watched Coach Hodges' post-game presser. I haven't watched Jasper Flood. I know he has a video, or whoever else was interviewed post-game, or even BYU players that have been interviewed over the last couple of days. Not sure what they have said, especially West Virginia. Not sure what they've said about this floor that they played on. I did see a player from K-State who said it was horrendous, post-game. And I haven't touched the floor. I don't know what it's like. Brad Howe and Tony Caridi, maybe they can tell you a little bit more. But from the eye test of watching this game that West Virginia just played, there were players, and more West Virginia than BYU, at least from what I noticed, there were players sliding all over the place that did not look particularly comfortable playing on this glass court. Can't say I blame them, right? Just from, again, not being there, not being in the moment, but Honor Huff, Jasper Floyd several times, and I'm not talking 20 times each either, but several times just lost their footing. A few of those went to turnovers. Amir Jenkins, I think, in the first half had one, he just kind of slipped and fell and landed out on the end line and it gave BYU the basketball. It was a turnover. And I don't think either, and they might have been trained not to, and I could have missed this. They might have said something here or there, but I don't think the announcers, Fran Fraschilla, I don't think he said a word about this court and the way that guys were slipping. I didn't hear anybody say anything, and I haven't seen anybody post anything on X about it either. But I know what I watched. I know what I saw. There were guys slipping on this floor. More so than you would, at the Coliseum on a normal court, period. And now, said it pregame, does BYU have a little bit of an advantage having played a full game on this court the night before? Yeah, absolutely. Will teams that have, BYU is going to be a team that's played twice on this court. They're going to play against Houston. Houston hasn't played on this court yet, right? That is an advantage. It just is. And now I get, I'm not blaming the court, but because both teams played on it tonight. And BYU, from what I could tell, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, BYU seemed to handle the court better than West Virginia did. Whatever, that is what it is. It's just, there's nothing else to say about that statement. It's just what I saw. And West Virginia players were slipping and sliding all over. And so I wouldn't think, based on what I saw, that if they were asked about it postgame, I wouldn't think they thought too kindly of it. We'll have to see. I'll have to go back and watch that after I'm done recording and see what they said. But just kind of an interesting thing there. And again, look at real quick at the box score, and we'll go over some final things. Dybantsa with 27, 7 boards, 3 assists. Really strong first half, especially for him. 20 points for Kennard Davis, 5 of 6 from 3. The rest of the team went 1 of 12 from 3, so they're super thankful for Kennard Davis knocking it down from beyond. Dybantsa himself was 0 for 3. Kostic was 0 for 6 and 0 points, right? You held him to nothing. And so there's encouraging things defensively from this game in a sense. I mean, Dybantsa got 27, and I get that, but he had 24 shot attempts. 6 of 18 from 3 as a team, 5 of those coming from one player. They didn't get to the free throw line a whole lot, just 6 of 10. You turned them over 13 times. The only problem is you turned it over 22 times. Yeah, I mean, again, maybe it's going to be an off season. We'll get into some, I don't know if we'll do player grades. Certainly, talk about Coach Hodge as a whole and what he did this season and likes and dislikes and thoughts there. But this game, if you were to tell me it was BYU 68, West Virginia 48, I probably would have been able to guess that Trayson Eaglestaff didn't shoot the ball well, didn't play well, 1 of 3. That's correct, right? I would have probably been able to guess Belo got in double figures and shot it over 50% from the floor and had 7 rebounds. I probably wouldn't have said 7 turnovers, but he did have 7 turnovers. But he had 11 points, 5 of 9. I probably would have guessed something similar to that. Probably would have guessed Harlan Obioha, 2 points. Right? That wouldn't have been a hard one. Probably would have guessed Jasper Floyd, about 9 points, 5 boards, 2 assists. Not a hard one there. Probably would have guessed Otter Huff, 15, 16, 17. He finished with 17, 3 of 13 from the floor. Easy to guess that one. DJ Thomas, 0 for 3. Could have guessed that. Although he had, bigger game against these guys the previous time. So I'd have guessed he would have gotten the scoring column, but I'm not shocked by it's a 0. Not shocked by Amir Jenkins having 0 because he didn't shoot the ball in 6 minutes played. And Chance Moore, 7 points off the bench, 7 boards, 3 of 9 from the free throw line. Could have guessed that one too, right? So box score wise, I mean, it pretty predictable. If you would have known the final score, I wish I would have if I just gave me the box score, I didn't watch the game, and I could have just kind of rattled off what I thought, how this team got to 48. It would have been about that, and I'm very serious about that. It would have been about that guess. So Mountaineers fall, early exit in the Big 12 tournament, and a game you obviously had to win. And officially, though, we're done with the bubble conversation, thankfully. That kind of actually feels good to stop believing something that's not really true. This team is not NCAA tournament caliber. They've shown that this year. They've had some good wins, good memories, good things done, but not good enough to get in the NCAA tournament, and that's just valid. 18-14 now on the season, 9-9 in Big 12 conference play, regular season now with 10 Big 12 losses. And again, you lost 4 games in the non-conference to opponents that, you could have beaten. A couple of them you had. And you lost all those on neutral courts. And so West Virginia now falls to 0-5 on a neutral court with this second round exit in Kansas City. But, some of that's a topic for another day, and some of that's actually things we've already talked about a few episodes ago. You'd have to find it. I just did an episode called What If after the end of the regular season. Well, what if this thing went West Virginia's way or this thing went West Virginia's way? Because the reality of it is, because the NCAA bubble is so bad this year, as far as the caliber of teams that are on it, West Virginia was not far, legit, not far from making the tournament. A couple of those wins in non-conference, or you don't fall to Utah or K-State, it don't take much. We're not talking 5 wins. We're not talking 4 wins. We're talking 2 to 3 wins away from making the big dance. And, those 2 or 3 wins could have came in Kansas City too. And that would have been a hard one, right? It would have been easier. The problem, I'll say this, the problem on the season, and this might not be easy to hear right now, but the problem on the season ending at this point where it's no March Madness is not because of how you performed in Kansas City. It's because of how you performed before Kansas City, right? Because if a couple of those what-if games, you win a couple of those non-conference games, you don't fall to Utah, you're over 500 in conference play, and then you come out and you lose to BYU in the Big 12 tournament, but you're still at 20, 21 wins, you're probably in the field, right? And so the damage had already been done, and we said that when those non-conference losses came, like the damage had been done. That hurt you, that put you in a hole. You might not be able to overcome it, and sure enough, they weren't. Right? So don't be frustrated that West Virginia lost to A.J. Dybantsa and BYU in a revenge game for them, a team that you already beat. Don't be frustrated with that. Be frustrated with the fact that you had opportunities all season long after another, and you couldn't capitalize. Right? Let me just, like, real simple. You beat Oklahoma State in overtime. You handle business against Utah at home. You finish conference play 11-7, and you're 20-12. You're going dancing. Similar story to UCF right now, although they were 500 in conference, but 20 wins entering the conference tournament. They got a big win over Cincinnati today in overtime, knocked Cincinnati out. West Virginia is now out. So the Big 12 doesn't have any bubble teams left. The teams that are in, period. But if that was West Virginia's story, you don't collapse against TCU. I mean, there's so many, and you can go watch that episode because I already covered all this. It was just the big title on the thumbnail is just "What If." So go watch that. Still relevant today. But yeah, I mean, Oklahoma State, you win that one, and you beat Utah at home. Not a big ask, and you make the tournament. So that stings. And while it's not a big ask, you still have to put things in perspective with what your expectations were for this team this season. Because, and we'll talk about it, I'm sure we might have a whole episode dedicated to this, going 18-13 and 9-9 in conference play is not that this West Virginia team underperformed. Did they underperform in certain games? Yes. Did they overperform in certain games? Yes. Beat Kansas, beat BYU, beat Cincinnati twice, beat UCF twice. Right? That's you overperformed a little bit and won those games. And that's going to happen every season. You're going to have a game you should have won, but you lost, and a game you should have lost, but you won. And West Virginia had a few of those. But again, grand scheme of things, 18 wins, 13 losses, 500 in conference play, and you went to Kansas City with a shot to do something and maybe get in the dance, make some noise. This was not a, I don't want to say failed season. This was not a down year. This was not a below expectations season for West Virginia. It just wasn't. It just wasn't. Look at this roster. Look at this offense. And, guys on this roster underperformed what we thought they would, and that happens too every year. But again, there's some games you wish you had back, but every bubble team and every team not in the NCAA tournament that's just off of that, every team can say that every year. But if there's, a few things to note, man, like you finish some games differently, we'd be having a different conversation. But unfortunately, we're not. And real quick to end out this episode, man, my take on postseason play, the crown, whatever, I'm all for the crown if it means playing Darren DeVries, Tucker DeVries in Indiana, who fell to Northwestern tonight. They're not making the tournament either, which is a great feeling. It helps you feel a little bit better. But, I don't know. I mean, would I like to see this team play again? Contrary to popular belief, I would, because a lot of people are so done, and I get that too. But I think it's that perspective for me that just says, you know what? All things considered, this wasn't a team that underperformed. This was a team that's, you could make an argument, was above expectation. It's close, right? Certainly, this wasn't a team you were thinking going to get 23, 24 wins and get into the dance as a top 5 seed, right? Nothing like that. So, accepting an invite to the crown or NIT, what to do, what not to do, I don't have a strong opinion on it. The just basketball fan in me would love to see them continue to play. And, as far as just the workings of like recruiting and how that affects, truly closing the book and moving on, because a lot of these guys are seniors, so like it doesn't add any value, to West Virginia basketball for next season. But Amir Jenkins is a freshman. DJ Thomas is a freshman, but how much does it affect recruiting and moving on to next year and closing the book and opening the next chapter? Like, I don't know, and I can't answer that. I don't know that anyone really, really can. I wouldn't think, although I'm not knowledgeable because I'm not in the building, breaking these things down, but I would think that it doesn't affect you that much in recruiting and getting ready for next year to go out and play a few more games with your team this season. But we'll see. I'm not going to be affected either decision, yes or no. But yeah, I mean, wouldn't it be cool if the stars aligned and you played Indiana in the Crown? That'd be kind of neat for fans. So we'll see. But again, thank you. Like we said at the beginning, I wanted to start with that and end with that. Thank you for being here. Mountaineer Moment, episode 165, and completion, potentially, of a Mountaineer basketball season, the first of its kind here on Mountaineer Moment. So thank you, and we will see you next time. Plenty of content still to come. Let's go Mountaineers.